Good evening. In my 4 years in Israel and Palestine, I experienced and I interviewed and listened, some of them as horrible as Teagistes. But today, I don't want to speak to you about them, but I want to speak for them, to let their cry be heard. 3 or 4 months ago, I received a telephone call from the United States. A desperate Eritrean woman. Her name was Rachel. Rachel, her brother was kept in Sinai, in Egypt, and she was asked to pay $36,000 for his ransom to be released from their hands. She was forced to listen while her brother was tortured, screaming for mercy. And Rachel was desperate. She didn't know what to do. Because herself even, she was just new as a refugee in the United States. And her family are very poor. So it took her ages in order to raise the $36,000 in order to bring out her brother. Why she called me Rachel? She called me because she wanted, when she has raised this amount of money, begging on the streets and the churches, and relatives, even her family, sold their belongings, animals or houses, whatever they have, in order to save their child. And she wanted me to send this money, and so that I pass it to an Israeli, so that he can pass it to the Sinai, to the human traffickers. Her call put me in a very difficult position. I didn't know what to do. I prayed God to give me strength because I did not have the answer. In one hand, if I do this, maybe this boy, 17-year-old boy, might be saved his life. In the other hand, I was opposing how I can cooperate with these human traffickers, this madness of chain of slavery, to give them this amount of money, who people, from what they haven't, they brought this amount of money to save their child. It was heartbreaking situation for me. I didn't know what to say. But I have to tell her, I cannot do it. I cannot cooperate with these people. Either you have to send it directly or find your way. After a week or a few days, she called me back. Her 17-year-old brother was killed. For several days, I couldn't sleep. And I was wondering what the Good Shepherd would have done. I don't know if I have to feel guilt. I don't know. I don't have an answer. In Israel, there are 53,000 asylum seekers. Most of them are from Eritrea, Sudan, and Ethiopia. And there are many, small number of refugees. And these people made their journey to Israel through Sinai. And most of them, they pass through from one trafficker to another, and they end up into these torture camps. And their family, they have to raise thousands of money and to save the children. In my volunteer work with Physicians for Human Rights Israel, I did interview with the survivors of human traffickers, more than 1,500 people. I met people burned with melted plastics. I have met people burned with kerosene. I have met people with deep wounds with chains. I met people became blind because for 6 months, 8 months, they were blindfolded. And when they take them out to the sun, they lose their sight. I tell you one story. The worst is when their mind and soul is wounded. Only God can heal them. Only God can give them strength to see the future, to embrace the human person. This is what I do and pray. So these people, they may trust human person. They may look their future in bright. And I have to listen and listen and listen. One day in this Physicians for Human Rights of Israel, I met a lady who escaped from Eritrea with her best friend, her childhood friend. And as soon as they arrived to Sudan, they were kidnapped. They were kidnapped and they were brought to Sinai in human way without water. If they give them water, was stained with gasoline so that they don't ask more. And a very small bread. As soon as they have arrived to Sinai, to the torture camps, they were tortured, electrocuted, hanged, suspended from the ceiling, and abused sexually, human way and inhuman way. And they were chained for 6 months. The friend of Wayne could not survive. She died. You know what they did? They left her best friend for 3 days chained with her while she was dead. And she was screaming, "Kill me also. I cannot live without her. Kill me." And what they did, they poured on her a diesel and burned her hair. Lucky, maybe God's grace, she was survived. She survived. And when finally her parents paid the 30,000, she was carried to the border of Israel. And she was a shadow of herself. When she saw on the mirror for the first time in Beersheba hospital, she didn't recognize herself. And she was telling me, I was pinching myself to know if I am dead or I am alive. I'm an African. I was born in Africa. I work in Sudan, in Ethiopia, in Kenya, in Uganda. I passed many war, famine, hunger, and difficulties. But the horror that I have listened in Israel from the torture camp survivors, you don't see it even in terror films. But these boys and women, they are courageous. They tell thousands of times, they dig their wounds 100 times to the journalists, to whoever promised to them, we will stop what is happening. We will tell to the world. But the world, till now, is silent. The world doesn't care because they are poor Africans. They are still, while I am speaking, there are people under the torture camps. They are still in the torture camps, dying and suffering and crying. and nobody hears their cry because they are underground. Even those above ground, they don't have chance to come and tell their story. That's why I came to speak about them. They don't have chance, as she was saying, our sister from Malta. They don't have right. They don't have right in Israel after such problems, after such torture and shock. They don't have any right. They are called infiltrators. They don't have any status. From prison to prison. From prison to prison. They have done weeks of hunger strike and a lot of demonstration. Nobody listens. Instead, they are put in prison. But they are strong. They fight for their rights. I don't want to enter why these people run away from their own countries. You know more than I do. You know more than I do. But what I want is to pray for them so that their strength, their trusting in God and in human person to be strong. You know, on the street of Tel Aviv, when I walk, or when I volunteer work with African Refugee Development Center, I meet women with a child holding on their chest. And they tell me, Sister Aziza, you know this child? You remember? I don't want him. I couldn't go ahead with the pregnancy because it was too painful for me to carry on this child without father. I didn't even see the man that he was abusing me because I was blindfolded. But now, it is the reason of my living. But now, this is for me that makes me reconcile with my past and gives me strength, my future to see bright. As a woman and as a missionary, after God, they are my strengths. These are my strengths. And that's why today I stand to tell you about their courage and their faith. You know, before I came with a psychologist doctor, I went to hospital to see a lady who was dying. And we couldn't hear her. The psychologist was this way, and I was this way. And I was singing in our language, in Tigrinya. And at a certain point, I see her hand pointing up to God. She was saying, I couldn't hear her well, Sinai, Sinai. I came. Then she mumbled, so much is untold. Yes, she's right. We will never know what happened to these brothers and sisters of ours in Sinai. As a Comboni, I am a Comboni sister, my founder fought against slavery. Against slavery. And I want to end also. He fought against slavery and he showed the world this has to end. I want to also, this slavery, new slavery, I want to end with the grace of God and of prayer of all of us. And so, please don't remain also yourself in silence. Thank you. God bless you.